The gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Casten, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to follow up with you, Dr. Zhu, on your exchange with Mr. Vargas. And if I'm being way too simple or dumb, feel free to tell me. You wouldn't be the first person to tell me that. The idea that these central clearing agencies free up more money in the system, more liquidity in the system, is that an accounting issue or just a risk-shifting issue? So, is there something fundamental going on, or is this just that we're basically taking liabilities off the balance sheets of entities that have obligations to maintain certain capital ratios and moving that risk to another spot in the system that doesn't have those obligations? So are we reducing total risk or just moving it around in ways that it increases the capital in the system from those who are allowed to or constrained by capital ratios?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The answer is that central clearing reduces risk. There is a risk, think about the broker-dealer in the middle, and they borrow money from one side of the market and lending money to the other side of the market in two repo transactions. Now, the risk is actually a perfect offset. However, because of accounting rules, the gross amount must show up on the balance sheet. That turns out to be constrained on the balance sheet capacity of dealers. Central clearing collapses these two offsetting transactions into one, and because there's a perfect offsetting, there's a zero risk in that sense. And of course, the clearinghouse will still charge margin on the net position, but that is way smaller compared to the gross position.
But I just want to clarify, because you said because of accounting rules. If I don't have a central clearing agent in the middle, am I holding more liability even if I'm on both sides of the trade? Because I've, in some gap preponderance of risk question, I bear more risk. So is that an accounting judgment primarily, or is it that that all of a sudden I have an entity that has offsetting risks that I didn't have before?
In that example, it is both an accounting issue. By accounting, it shows on the balance sheet. Therefore, it triggers all sorts of capital implications. Now, of course, the dealer in the middle has offsetting risk with two counterparties, but because these are two counterparties, the credit risk cannot offset without central clearing. By moving these transactions into central clearing, the clearinghouse basically eliminates all the counterparty risk, therefore reducing the overall risk in the system and free up balance sheet.
Okay, so if I think I understood that, but I'll have to think about it. If I've now reduced the risk on the primary dealers, and we'll stipulate for this example that they're GSIBs, someone who's got obligations, does that then by definition allow them to essentially have a stronger balance sheet and therefore less capital ratios before any change in SLRs? So in other words, is this redundant with a change in the SLRs, or how do you think about those two pieces together?
Thank you for the question. So if the dealer is able to move that amount off the balance sheet, then that would be really helpful in reducing the SLR requirement. It essentially takes that number out of the total leverage exposure, whereas what the Federal Reserve did last week is to change the ratio, the capital ratio. These two sort of move in the same direction of relief balance sheet constraint, but I think the central clearing effect here is to remove that part of the balance sheet completely away from the calculation of leverage ratio.
But if I'm reducing my declared liability, I've changed I'm math wrong here. I've changed the denominator in the leverage ratio.
Exactly.
Even before I've changed what the ratio is, right?
Yeah, that's right. So today, the primary dealer could immediately take that amount of money sort of away from the total leverage exposure calculation by going to central clearing. In that sense, it is a pretty fundamental relief.
Okay.
And it doesn't really matter what the ratio is because that part just disappears from the.
Okay, I'm getting close to the end of time, but I have a sort of a simple view that the Fed provides a discount window to the banks, and then the banks provide a discount window to hedge funds through the repo market. And I do want to make sure that we're not sort of financially engineering away a more fundamental problem.
The netting is an accounting and a transaction, but the netting only reduces risk because there are two counterparties, one on each side. If one of them fails, there's still risk. That risk is either borne by the other counterparty or it's borne by the CCP.
No, I understand, and I guess I know I'm out of time, but I'm curious, and if the chairman will indulge, if not, we'll take this in writing. Do we all agree with Dr. Zhu that the creation of more CCPs puts more transparency into the system? And if so, does that reduce some of the volatility risk in the system? And whether we're talking about the 2019 situation or the flash crash, do we reduce some of the innate volatility in a less transparent system by the creation of these CCPs?
This may require a response in writing, Doctor, the nature of that question. And with that, I always indulge my friend from Illinois.